Okay, so this session will be recorded.
Think you need.
Sorry?
No, all good.
All good? Okay, thank you. Okay, so good morning and welcome to today's session. My name is Preeti Yadav and I'm the lead organizer of GDG Sari. It's an absolute pleasure to have you all here today. And just to give you a little idea about our events, we have successfully, fortunately, delivered around 12 sessions in person and virtual so far this year. If you look at our community, we started in January. I was the first one to I would the first session that I joined was from a different community in November, and I decided, okay, we can do it in Surrey because Surrey in British Columbia, we do not have many technical events going on, and it was a lot of time that was spent from traveling from Surrey till Vancouver or Burnaby for the tech events. But ever since we have been growing, we really maintain our quality. We try to bring the content that is needed by our community members. And we are more about hands on. So you see, our past events were all really successful. We brought speakers from all over the place, all over the world, like yourselves, Anuj. So our speaker today, Anuj Kumar Donvir, he's joining us from New Jersey. Other speakers in past, they have come from all these companies, universities. They are instructors, they are developers, they are students as well who showcase their projects on our platform. So let's talk about what do we have today. So today we are excited to explore Angular's new signals feature. This session will showcase a project developed entirely in Google Cloud Platform's Project IDX editor, highlighting the enhanced developer experience with Google Gemini's code assist and chat features built right into the editor. Now, let me introduce you to our expert for today's session, Anuj Kumar Donve. With over 15 years of experience, our speaker is a tech lead and full stack engineer skilled in building dynamic user interfaces with Angular and React and robust backends with Node.js and Java. His expertise spans both cloud and on premise solutions, particularly with AWS. Beyond Anuj's technical work, he contributes to the tech community through writing, mentorship, and industry judging. We are thrilled to have him guide us today. And now, before we begin, a big thank you to our sponsor, Jam.dev. They make capturing and fixing bugs easy with one click bug reports that include detailed diagnostics. We appreciate their support in making this session possible. So, without further ado, I would hand the session over to Anuj.
So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone who I might be seeing in from the different parts of the world. So, let's get started. Before we get started, myself, as Preeti rightly introduced, I work as tech lead at ADP, one of the largest payroll providers in the globe, and my expertise lies around application development and be it a front end development or backend development or maybe interacting with databases. So I handle all kinds of different kinds of activities around application development. And very recently, I mean, now to say that Gen AI is a recent thing is might be a little bit of a stretch, but I have been very much interested in Gen AI, and uh, Google has recently launched its cloud-based ID Project IDX, which has Gen AI support built in through Gemini LLM. So that gives us an opportunity to do this technical showcase where we are going to transform an Angular application using signals, which is another new feature that's being released by Angular Framework team, who who is again part of Google ecosystem, and we are going to do this in Project IDX completely. So we are going to do a hands-on let's quickly go. What's going to be an objective, for today's session? So we are going to learn to write code directly into cloud using Project IDX. And we are going to see how it's going to improve the developer efficiency. And at the same time, we are going to see how we can improve our existing Angular application using signals, which is the new feature, as I mentioned earlier. So a little bit brief about Project IDX. Project IDX is a cloud-based IDE, as I mentioned, which is built on top of the same foundational framework, Code OSS, which is powering the most familiar and most famous IDEs going around Visual Studio Code. And it can be used to build applications which are like web applications or mobile applications or purely Gemini AI based applications. So they provide the IDX team provides you the template. Let's look at this. So this when you go to idx.google.com, you will see this window that's open for you. You will need a Google ID, Gmail ID, I believe, to get started, and then you'll be introduced to this window, which is a very familiar window if you're familiar with the Visual Studio Code. And in the right panel, we can see different kinds of templates the IDX team provides us to get started if you're building from scratch. Or the other option is to import an existing project, which we are going to leverage a little later in the demo as well. So what makes IDE the quite impressive is you can code it using Google, the Project IDX ID from anywhere, maybe from camping in woods to going doing it on beach. Although I don't recommend you guys do the coding while you are actually on vacation, but hey, choice is yours. Uh, uh, so and you don't need any fancy machines. All you need is a browser. So that is a one big driving factor. Plus the ecosystem of Project IDX lets you visualize your apps while you're building them with live reload, and you don't need to maintain anything else to do that. So that's another important feature that they provide. And one of the very, very important features and core features they provide is integrated support for Gemini LLM, which we are going to see hands-on as well in Project IDX. Using Gemini LLM, you can have all kinds of support that you can expect from an LLM like Gemini. You can chat with it like you chat normally in browser window, or you can have Gemini suggest you code lines while you're building your code. So we are going to see all of this in detail in the demo. But before we jump there, let's look a little bit about the Angular, the one of the heroes of our project, our showcase today. And so what Angular is a framework that was introduced by Google around 11 years, 12 years ago, which revolutionized the way the web applications were built. And the core of the Angular is breaking your web applications into smaller manageable pieces known as components, and then driving these components through reactive data via two-way data binding. What does that mean? The two-way data binding is a mechanism by which, let's say, you are seeing a stock price of a you're tracking a stock price of a stock, and the next minute the price changes to something else. You want your UI to display the new price. So once you have the new data, how do you refresh your information on the browser so that you see the new price? That is handled by Angular's two-way data binding. Let's say if you implemented this in Angular project. Actually, a lot of banks and a lot of transactional companies, they use Angular quite heavily in their project due to these reasons, because it's a reliable framework and it allows you the two-way data binding. And how Angular is able to achieve this two-way data binding is through something called efficient change detection. So let's look at what little bit brief what change detection means. Change detection means the inbuilt mechanism that Angular runs when the data, for example, in our case, the stock price changes, how the data needs to be reflected. So Angular is constantly tracking the state variables, as we call it, and it updates the UI internally using its change detection mechanism. In the change detection mechanism, Angular has uh, either default detection strategy or on-post change detection strategy. So default change detection strategy is what we just talked. Uh, automated way of updating the data on your user interface, be it your browser or be it your mobile device. And to do this, Angular utilizes something called Zone.js, which is a third-party library developed outside the Angular ecosystem, which allows tapping into asynchronous events like HTTP requests, DOM events, and timers, and trigger a change detection cycle. This is very neat and very nice, but it leads to another problem, a problem that sometimes the change detection happens unnecessarily, and it tries to update the data on the UI and re-render the UI when the actual data, underlying data, may not have changed. This happens a lot when you have a hierarchy of components where you have a parent component and child component. And while child component might not need an update, because there was update in data of child parent component, it might re-render. That makes the application slower, and especially this becomes a bigger issue once your application size starts to grow bigger and you add more features and more functionalities in the application. And Angular team knew this and they understood this, so they released something called on-push change detection strategy a few years ago. What does the on-push change detection strategy do is it takes out that automated updating of the DOM or UI, and it puts the onus of change detection on the logic creator or the developer themselves, where they can now identify the time and the events which would uh, do the re-render of the user interface. Now, this is amazing. Now you are able to cut through the additional and extra change detection strategies. But this can lead to one another problem is the developers might forget to actually update the UI when the real update was necessary, and that can lead to uh, unwanted bugs in the runtime of the application. And so, if we think about both of these problems, something needs to be done. One is to excessive re-rendering, and one is to the other problem is to have a failed re-rendering when it was necessary. An Angular team has recently worked on a new feature called Signal, which does both. It cuts down the excessive re-rendering of the application, as well as that re-rendering or the change detection mechanism is still automated. So let's look at Angular signals a bit more in detail. And the key features of the signals is it has the explicit chain tracking, as we mentioned, just in case, just like our default change detection strategies. And it only tracks the meaningful parts of the application rather than refreshing the entire app when a subsection of the application changes. That optimizes the application's behavior, and something we call reactivity, where your data changes and your UI has updated. So the reactivity is super quick, but it's not unnecessary reactivity. And we are going to see the next benefit in our live demo as well, where the signals allow you to automatically manage the dependencies, where one signal might depend upon another signal. And if the parent signal's value changes, uh, the child signal, the signal that is depending upon the parent signal, will change its calculations or values as well. So this is automatic change detection, which where the developers don't need to do anything else, and they are able to uh, do it on their own. So along with these cool benefits around the development efficiency, what other benefits the signal bring in is performance optimization. If you recall from our previous slide, the Angular's default change detection relied on Zone.js, a third-party library. Now, once you have the third-party library, you have to send it to your browser bundles when you're rendering your Angular applications, which sends extra resources on the browser, making it slower and less performant. And also with the signals, because we are able to like explicitly track the change detection, we are making the data intensive applications smooth as well. So we are cutting down on bundle size that to be sent to the browser, as well as we're improving the rendering renderings in data intensive applications. Along with this, because the way signals have been built and organized, it improves the code readability much clearly. And we are going to see this in our demo as well. And due to this, there are less bugs, and the code becomes maintainable and predictable for the longer time, which actually helps. One of the big advantage of that is it helps the new people who might come to your team pick up the project quickly and start adding the new features. So we are going to see all of this by transforming an existing Angular application, and we are going to leverage signals. When we do this transformation, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to do in Project IDX, and we are going to play with Gemini LLM as well while we do this. So, lot of theory. Let's go to actual project. And as I explained previously, this is the Project IDX window that you'll be presented if you're logging in for the first time in the Project IDX. And you have options to start a new project using any of these pre-built templates. And they provide a lot of templates already. You could use Node.js or Python or Go or Flutter for your mobile app developments, or directly just work with Gemini APIs or Angular. Or you, if you were working on some project before, or you already have some part of your project built in from past, you can import it from the Git repository. So that's the option we are going to do. We are going to provide the URL of our repo, and you guys will have this repo if you guys want to uh, do all of these activities on your on your own of this demo. So I'll make sure you guys get this repo later. And once you provide the URL, all you need to just do is import, and Project IDX starts to clone your repo. And while it's cloning, one of the core differences between starting from a template and importing from your repository is Project IDX. When you create a new project from a template, let's say you're trying to build a fresh Angular application or a Python application, it manages the dependencies of your application for you. What does that mean is it will, let's say for an Angular application, it will do your npm installs, and this can happen as well sometimes where Project IDX might have the increased load and it might not be. Let's refresh. And let's see, just the time for Project IDX to have the increased load. Maybe more people are trying. Uh, so the core difference that I was explaining is Project IDX will actually install the dependencies for you if you are um, doing it from the one of the templates that Project IDX team provides. Whereas uh, for the new the Git imports like this, you need to do the installation yourself, where you need to do your npm installs for your Angular or Node.js applications, or your pip installs for your Python applications. Um, and we need to handle it back. So hopefully Project IDX will uh, come back soon. We're going to try again. And let's see if this helps. In the meantime, while Project IDX is loading up, if you guys have any questions, we can take some questions now so that we are utilizing our time the best way possible.
Right.
And
I was typing answer to Sohi. But do you want to ask the question, Sohi? Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, so just as a beginner and the learner of the I took several courses through the Coursera about AI and stuff. I'm taking like online courses and learn about the transformer architecture and also the fine tuning stuff. But there must be a prerequisites knowledge or any learning stuff in between because I see the gap my knowledge and understanding and the explanation or presentation. Where can I get any resources to fill the gap? And also, I got access to the like IDX dev, and it looks really like fun to walk around or playing around with. And yeah, I can actually, yeah, I can maybe spend more time on this, but yeah, because when it comes down to you in your presentation, there is some diagram and things and that yeah, that got me really out to nowhere.
Yeah, no, great question. As a beginner, we all wonder, are we starting right, or are we learning just bits and pieces? Where can we, put a entire picture? How can we do that?
So
So, yeah,
that's a great question actually. And let me ask you this: are you trying to build a model yourself, or are you trying to build a product on top of the existing AI technologies like Gemini, LLM? So because both of these things are a little bit of they have a little bit of difference. Are you trying to create a Gemini from the scratch, or are you trying to use the Gemini in your application and make it better, or maybe create a new application from your Gemini
Yeah, that's the
from
one. Yes,
Gemini?
the
So
one, the latter one.
so
Yeah.
I'll let me give you this. This guy is a very renowned researcher and then very reputed. I'll share with Preeti. You can grab, but Andrew Ng. I don't know if you guys know
Let
him.
me take a picture of that. Oh, okay.
So
Oh,
he is
there's
a
the
very
well, yeah. Okay.
he is a very great guy, and they release a lot of free courses for
Uh huh.
people to learn AI and build with AI from the beginner friendly. So my first course on AI to learn AI was from Andrew Ng.
Oh.
Let me tell you,
Uh
uh,
huh.
couple of years ago, and ever since I have been following him, and his
Right.
courses are really good. So his courses are from basic to they go into advanced concepts like RAG and agentic LLMs.
Uh
So I
huh.
suggest you guys look at
yeah.
Oh,
the
Andrew.
courses that he releases,
Okay.
and they're free. They're free to learn. So uh,
I did
the
put
main thing,
the link in
Oh
the
yeah.
yeah,
chat.
Yeah. Okay.
That's deeplearning.ai. I'll add on what you said, Anuj. Um,
yeah.
so for the products that are specific, like that are Google specific, for that matter, Project IDX or Gemini, or in general the concepts around all these technologies. Um, as part of these sessions, we provide you access to Google Cloud Skill Boost, labs. So usually those labs cost you credits that you buy, but as part of these sessions, the labs are free of cost for you to go through, and the content is free of cost for you to go through, and it's really easy, well put. Content on the Google's platform. I'll share it with you. I'll add you as a member to the pool, Shoaib.
Yeah.
So you can get, and they also have the levels, beginners and advanced, and intermediate. So that's another way you can find IDX, Project IDX there, things about Angular. In fact, the code labs, So
Code
yeah,
lab. Okay. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you so much.
good.
We appreciate that insight. Yeah.
Those are good resources to go through for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So
Anuj.
now the IDX that can sometimes happen because they have a lot of demand for project IDX. So you might need to wait few minutes for having a VM assigned. So you saw a good part. So we are not just getting a ID, but actually there is a virtual machine that is allocated to you by Google for free while we do this. We build our project. And now our project IDX has loaded the code that we had. If you see the code has some errors, and the errors are happening because of the fact core fact I explained as the difference between a template and a project that you're importing is our dependencies have not been imported. So we can just like in Visual Studio Code, you can spin up a new terminal and that gives you the complete access. If it is a Python project, you do your pip install. This is Angular, so we are going to do npm install, and I use npm I only. because why not? You can just shorthand it, the install word to just I, and it does the same thing. While this is building, if you see our Project IDX window, it sometimes might recommend you to install it since it's the project that you're loading. It might recommend to install certain extensions, or you can choose to install them or not. It's completely up to you. It doesn't impact your experience with Project IDX. While this is installing, let's learn the IDE a little bit as well. Just like your Visual Studio Code, you have your Git, your File Explorer. You could do your Git directly from here, or your if you want to install any other extensions, you can install it from here and run and debug, and everything is right. So this should sound very familiar, just like uh, Visual Studio Code. As again, this is same framework that Visual Studio Code uses, Code OSS. This is built on top of the same framework. And this file explorer, then our code window, and then this is something that we see in the right side is our live reload window, which should start to work as soon as our dependencies which we were trying to install have been successfully installed, and this should spin up a live reload for us, um, and our application should load up fairly soon. So let's understand our application. Our application is an employee time tracking application, which is where let me close the terminal now that these dependencies have installed. It where you are acting or the person who's viewing the screen is acting as a manager. Let me zoom it for you guys. Is this good? You guys are able to see the code and everything. Uh,
Um,
Otherwise, I'll zoom in.
a little
Uh,
zoom in would be good. Yeah.
Let me zoom it a little bit more, maybe.
Yeah. This should. Yeah. This is fine. Thanks.
So as I was explaining our application, you are acting as a manager, John Doe, who is having a lot of people reporting to he or she, uh, where these people, Jon Snow, Daenerys, Tyrion, Arya, they're reporting to John Doe, and it's showing the number of hours the team has worked in this week. In this case, 196, and number of overtime hours, 30. And uh, Jon Snow's individual hours or Daenerys' individual hours are already displayed. And then it allows you to edit the hours as well. So let's say there was discrepancy in the Jon Snow's hour and he worked for 45 hours rather than 40. You're able to save this, and Jon Snow's hours are updated to 45 as well as the total hours are updated to 201. Nothing fancy, simple application. Uh, and it has a two core components, parent component, which is the screen that you're seeing on the right side, the two boxes, and then the child component, which gets loaded when you actually click on any of the employees to edit their hours. So if we look at the code real quick, we have a manager name, which is displayed here, John Doe, and then the selected employee, which can start out as null, but in this case, it would be now Jon Snow, and then the number of employees that that are actually reporting to the manager, which is an array, and then a whole bunch of helper methods. One of the method is to have the actual employee being selected, and then calculate the total hours or overtime hours, and then a method to actually save the changes to employees hours. So where 45 hours we change it to, let's say we make it 50. This method helps you do that. And real quick, let's look at the child component as well. Similarly, we have an input which is employee. So we are sending this object of employee to our child component, and it has method to capture the edited values and emit or send this edited values to the parent component, as well as there is a method for resetting the form as well if necessary. So if you're changing between employees, we need to remove the previous employees data, present the new employees data. So this application is completely built using the traditional Angular way with Zone.js and everything. So before we dive into signals, I want to talk a bit more about the Gemini in the Project IDX and how we can take the benefits of it. And we are going to see this in the when we do the actual code updates as well. So first and foremost, there is something called a Gemini button. Let me close this again, and you'll see it's a Gemini chat with Gemini button right in the right corner, and you'll be able to. Gemini will just give you the different things, maybe enable code-based indexing, enable suggestions. These are right when you do the code editions in your editor, and we hit continue. We enable them, and now you have the complete window for you uh, that you can chat while coding. So there are a whole bunch of commands Gemini provides, which you can provide here, and or you can type anything that you want here. So, for example, let's say if you're new to Angular signals, you can ask Gemini, I am new to Angular signal. How can I create one? And that will Gemini will help you do this, you know. So so it tells you how to create a basic signal with actual code, and you have ability to push this code to your file directly. We are not going to do it because we are not looking for this, but you could do this directly as well. And the other good part is to take the full advantages of Gemini inside your project IDs. There are a couple of settings that you should change in your project IDs. One of them, some of them, they start with the IDX dot, and then you see AI enable code based indexing and AI enable inline completion that we had also accepted when we launched the Gemini window. Once we do this, the Gemini has the context for our code base, and it's able to more better understand our code. So now let's start migrating our application to use signals. You know, let's go back to our web view. So how do we create a signal to begin with? So signal is you treat signal as, let's say, a function call. You know, so let you call something called signal, and then let's do the import of signal. So it's part of the Angular core uh, package, and then you provide the optional type of the signal. So let's say in our case, the manager name is a type of string. If you see, purposefully stopped here. If you see, there are some code already being suggested to me. This is Gemini helping us build our code while we type it, and it's trying to understand what we are trying to do, and based on that it's suggesting. So this is a native advantage that you will get when you start working with project IDX directly into your browser. And this is how you create a signal. And a signal takes a function call with the default value you can provide. Our manager names is John Doe, and let's remove the another thing. And now, how if you see, our UI is not displaying the name of the manager correctly. It's saying signal John Doe. Why so? Because to actually get the value out of a signal, you have to execute the signal. So let's go back to our code in HTML and execute the signal. So we have to execute the signal, and this would actually display the manager name properly. So we saw one core concept of signal, how to actually initiate a signal or create a signal, and how do you use the value of a signal. So you use the value of the signal by doing the execution on the signal. So it's like a function execution. Now we have few other important values here. But before we jump to those values, let's transform our employee array as a signal as well. So signal can have any kind of types that you can imagine in TypeScript. It does not restrict to just string or numbers, but it could be a custom type where employee is a model that we have created for our use. And we are going to define a signal of type like this. So simply, just like we did before, we use the signal function, and then as Gemini is suggesting, that's the correct suggestion from Gemini. But it will not, it might not always give you the best. It's trying to create an empty signal, but that's not what we want. We want actually the values of our signals to be provided as well. So let's do this, and let's correct our code a little bit. And but every step of the way, you see, Gemini is trying to assist us. It's trying to give us the head start, and it's assisting us. So as soon as we do this, if you see some of the errors, we start to observe in our code base because our employee array is used in multiple places. For now, let's comment this code out. And now we have converted our employee to a signal. So obviously we cannot just use it just like a regular array. So let's for now comment the code out and go back to our HTML template and try to display the employees properly. So if you go to our HTML code, you will observe we are using ng repeat to repeat the employees out of employees array. So we have to, just like our manager name, execute this so that now we are actually iterating over a proper array, not a signal. And as soon as we do this, our page starts to load, the error is gone away, and we are able to do this. So let's look at another core or another important aspect of signals, which is signals having dependency injection. What does that mean is a signal depending upon another signal. So we have something called regular hours and overtime hours, which are not displayed now. So we can simply just do one thing is create new signals. Is let's call this overtime, or let's call it more team overtime hours. And it's Project IDX is already trying to suggest us the Gemini, but we are going to use something called a computed, which is another type of a signal where now as soon as I give computed, the Gemini has completed the code for us. But let's look at what it did. Is it's taking computed is a signal which is depending upon another signal which is called employees, and it's reading from each employee and adding overtime hours. So you need to be careful when you're uh, accepting the code from uh, Gemini. Actually did try. We named this as overtime, so it created an overtime. But we can do same for the regular hours. But still, I would suggest to read through the code and don't accept it completely and see if it makes sense. So it's creating a total with 0 and then adding our employees, all employees hours. And now our team overtime signal, which is of type computed, is depending upon the value of the employee signal. So whenever the employees array changes, the employee array signal changes, we are going to have a team overtime hours updated. So let's use this now. So all we need to do is come here and remove the function call with the signal call, and now we have the overtime hours. Very similarly, we can define another thing, team regular hours, and have another computed, and with the help of code indexing and code completion from Gemini LLM, we are able to just recuse ourselves from typing all of these things and just simply use it by And now our overtime hours and regular hours are back. So for now, our activities in the parent component, I mean, we still have a manager. Let's convert this to employee. So it'll give us another cool aspect is you can provide a signal with one or the one or more type of optional values. So here it could be selected employee, could be a employee or a null. And as soon as we do that, this is going to fail, but that's okay. Here is the important thing that we can learn. We can modify a signal's value by set or by two mechanisms update. So these are the two ways we can change the signal's existing value. So let's use a set method and pass the employee so that this mechanism starts to work again. And now that we have converted our selected employee to signal, we have to modify our HTML. Key Nice would already know this. We are using Tailwind for our styling, and this we have to execute the signal here, and this would actually pass the signal to our child component, which is now able to read different values out of the selected employee. But let's leave this as a signal for now, and let's see what needs to be done. So let's move to our child component, and in the child component, we are introducing a third type of signal. We are going to introduce a third type of signal, which is quite eloquently called input. So previously Angular had this input directive to pass the data from your parent to your child, but now it calls it, you can do it, say, do the same thing using signals. So Angular is really, if you see the signal, Angular is moving towards signal gradually, and it's introducing the new concept with signals. So let's call it as a employee, or let's optionally say it could be null as well. And we call this as input. We simply call it as input. And we provide an initial value of null. And then remove this optional check, and we have to import the input from the core package of Angular. The dependency is all set. And this would break the code again because now we are trying to access the signal, and we're trying to edit the signal, but we are treating still as a regular variable in the code. Let's comment this code out. We are going to see it very quickly. And now you could do one thing is you could actually leave this as is, and that would work as well. But that means the parent component where it's invoking has to pass a value. So we have to then do it like this. And hopefully, yes, our signal is now being read. The input signal is reading the value provided to it by the parent component. But as you notice now, we are again starting to see the same issues that we had seen in the parent component when we changed the manager name. As to we have to always execute a signal to read the value out of it. So instead of employee, we have to do employee.name. And now we see the Jon Snow is back at the top. We still don't see their hours because previously we were using two variables, edited regular hours and uh, edited overtime hours to capture the form values here. But with the signals, we can simply use it like employees. regular hours, and we start to see the regular hours of the employee. Similarly, we can modify the overtime as well. So, so that's the good part. It's giving you the live feedback of any issues that you see. Now, but that's a good part about the IDX, that it gave you the live feedback of the errors that you created while coding. So you're able to rectify it. So now, again, now we are able to read the value of our employee input in child component. Now it's time to modify the values in the child component. As we saw in the parent component, let me go back again to give the reference. We were using a set method on a signal, or update method. There's something called update method as well, to change the value of the signal. So here we have a need to change the signals value from we need to change the regular hours and overtime hours. So we need to actually change the signal hours. But if I go here to employee and do this, it doesn't work. This dot employee dot, there is nothing called set or update. So the input type of signal is signal just meant for displaying the data that you receive from parent, but not modified inside the component itself. So and the Angular team knows that there might be a need to do this kind of activity as well. So they have provided another type of signal, which is again very similar to input, but it allows you modifying the values as well. And that signal is called, I'm going to leave this line here for the future reference. That signal is called as model. Think of it as a model being a signal which allows you to do edits to the signal as well, along with reading the values. So once we have the model uh, signal, we can do this. This dot employee dot set, or in this case we want update. We had used, I'm going to pause here for a moment. We had used the set method previously in the parent component because we did not want to change anything to the selected employee. What we wanted we just wanted to assign a new value to the selected employee. Here we have to update the existing employee that we had received from the parent component and update its value. Update its value. In this case, update the value of the overtime hours or regular hours. So when we use the update, we get the previous value of the employee back, and we need to do is uh, return the value. So we're going to return the employee, and that's about that. Now we are able to change the regular hours of our employee, and the updates will be tracked, and then we modify the save mechanism very soon to actually reflect it back to the parent component. But let's do this same thing, really copy over the same thing to the overtime hours change as well. And here we going to change the overtime hours method here, overtime hours property, I mean to say. And now our signals are updating based on the now the values of our signals are updating, but we need to send these changes back. Remember, we had commented this code out previously, so we need to send this back. And for that, you could use the traditional output event emitter, or even better, let's use the new signal that's come up along with the input, is something called output. And you might be catching the theme here. We're going to do the same thing again, and we're going to say output and then provide the type, optional type, and then initiate the signal with the empty value. Now we don't need to do anything fancy in the save changes, and we just need to emit the our employee, because now we are directly modifying the uh, employee signal. So we don't have to explicitly reassign any values to the regular hours and overtime hours of employee. So by using the signals now, our code is more clean and declarative, where extra variables are not necessary, and we are able to just simply take the same object and emit it back that we are using in child component. So once this mechanism is there, we need to come back to our parent component and fix the employee change method again. And let's do this. It's going to break a little bit. So if updated employee is present, remember for the cancel, we are going to set a null. Here we are going to do this. And let's do the update in the employee. So this dot employees dot update, and once we have update, we have to map it and send it back. So we have to change the specific employee that had changed, and changes. If employee ID is equal to, so we don't need this. We don't need the previous. So let's look at what we did. If employee ID is matching the updated employee ID, then we assign the new updated employee to that ID. Otherwise, we return the existing employee ID and then set our employee ID to null. And let's fix this as well. So this doesn't show up unnecessarily. So again, reiterating on this code, we are receiving an event from child component, which is giving us updated employee, and we are using this updated employee to update our employees array signal and change the employee which was modified to the updated employee's value, and then display it on the UI. So let's do this. And let's hit save, and looks like we have made some mistake. So let's look at what we are sending it from the child component. So we are sending this, and in the parent we are receiving employee. Let's remove this for now. It's actually updating. So all we needed was to remove this and do this. So let's refresh our web page and look at the updating of Jon Snow's hour to 44. We should expect Jon Snow becoming 44 and the total regular hours becoming 200. So yeah, so this is a very brief demo on signals, where we covered how we initiate a signal, how we use a computed signal, which we use in our overtime and regular time calculations, how we can use a signal which is of type input or of type model, or we can use an output signal as well. And we went through all of this, and we did this in a browser-based ID. How amazing is that? And all along the step, Gemini was there to help us in the code. And because we have done the Gemini's integration to our code base, we could actually say something like this, uh, let's copy the path. Let's say you are looking at this project for the first time. You can ask Gemini something like this. Can you explain me the code in, you don't need to even give the full file. You just give the file's path. And uh, right now it's like because of the VM overload and it's Gemini is not able to understand the path, but you could if it indexing your code base properly, it will not ask for the file. In this case, let's provide the file, and it will explain you the code. And by that you're able to understand the code before working on it and trying to make updates on the code. So Gemini is going to assist you on all along the way, be it your code completions. And let's say if you're saying my very it's equal to a new signal, Gemini is see it's suggesting to create a number. So it's going to assist you all along the way, and you don't have to do anything fancy setup to do this. So that concludes our brief demo. And now we can move to questions and feedbacks.
Thank you. Um, I must say,
I'm gonna stop sharing so that I talk more face to face with all of you. I can see you guys.
right. Um, yeah, I think this was really great, thorough lab that we saw. Small example, but we got to know how can we leverage signals and Gemini hand to hand, and Project IDX, of course. What I'll I'll say, correct me if I'm wrong. I'll say what I understood is that mm, how we were using handles like input and output earlier. So this is kind of an alternative to that, less of a boilerplate,
Less of a
signal.
boilerplate and moving from the traditional approach to more signal familiar approach and more signal
Right,
ecosystem. And
right,
Angular is slowly taking the different pieces of the traditional mechanism and moving them to signals. Uh,
right,
Actually, they are even trying to create libraries for interoperability with signals and RxJS. So
right,
there's a lot of things in the pipeline, and with every release of Angular, we are starting to get more and more features around signals.
right,
This actually marks a shift towards approach of how traditional Angular applications were, where now Angular applications are becoming less opinionated and more developer friendly and becoming more useful, to
right,
developers.
right. Perfect. Okay. So I think we don't have many questions because we covered a lot. And if there would be any questions, people are free to ask them in Discord, and I hope I'll send them to
Yes.
you to answer.
Yep.
But yeah, this has been lovely. I think for me personally, as you mentioned, I also see that it minimizes a lot of activity detection and the DOM work, that was like unnecessary overhead was there. So yeah, I think for me, I haven't yet been used. I haven't used signals yet. It's still pretty new for me. So what do you suggest? What resources do you suggest that I should, or anybody who is watching this, should go and learn about signals more? And where can they find this notebook that you just demoed to us?
Yes. So the entire code, I'll give you a link to the GitHub repository so they can look at the code. There is another branch in the same code base, which is called Signals, which has the completely transformed application from regular to Signals. And then there is a regular branch as well, which has the traditional code. That's one place to look at the code, take a feel of it, maybe do it yourself, kind of thing to understand more about Signals. The great resource to get started on is one the Angular's documentation themselves, and then there are great blogs on Angular.love website as well. which provides the brief overview of different features of the signals. And then there are great blogs on the Project IDX website as well, which helps people understand how to use Project IDX and how to use Gemini and what are different capabilities and there. So I would recommend these three resources for sure to go through to strengthen the understanding of Project IDX and Gemini and Angular, all of it.
Awesome. Thank you. And I do know that you are a writer yourself. So you are doing your own research, on a couple of topics. So is it going to be Twitter where we would see more updates on your,
Yes,
latest articles and the researches?
yes,
Okay, perfect. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you for future sessions as well.
sure. Thanks. Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Perfect. Sorry, we'll stop for 1 second just for a good selfie.
Sure.
And let's do cheese. Perfect. Thank you, and see you in next session, hopefully.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye bye.